Ms. Foxx.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Goldberg, from the newspapers and reporting available, the Biden administration appears intent on making a new nuclear deal, any deal, with the Iranians, even if it's a bad deal for America and our allies. The administration's current efforts to return to the JCPOA is a sweetheart deal for the Iranian regime compared to the much tougher deal the Trump administration was working towards. Despite the much better deal for Iran, why do you think the Biden administration has not been successful in getting the Iranians to go back to the deal? What is your assessment of the administration's negotiating team and position?
Thank you, Congresswoman, for the question. I think if we go back to the beginning of 2021, as the Iranians start testing the new administration to see what kind of mettle Joe Biden had, they started escalating their nuclear program quite extensively, more than we had ever seen during the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign. And instead of pushing forward on maximum pressure, continuing military deterrence, responding as our military men and women were under attack in Iraq and Syria, we started relaxing sanctions. We started pulling back censure resolutions in Vienna at the IAEA. And Iran said, great, we're going to start escalating more and more and more. Hassan Rouhani, the former president of Iran, was replaced, selected by the supreme leader with a even more hardline version, somebody who was going to drop the veneer, no more, wolf in sheep's clothing, just a wolf in wolf's clothing, somebody who has so much blood on his hands, building a sanctioned cabinet of the who's who of Terror Inc. to show the Americans, you want to give us money, you want to shower us, we're racing forward to the nuclear threshold. You go, come, we're going to have a whole new deal on our hands if you're not going to get serious with us, if you're not going to really push deterrence, pressure against us. We're going to take the open door you've created, race forward on a nuclear program, reclaim the upper hand, and wait till you come begging to us. And unfortunately, that's what's happened to this administration. Now, you talk about a lot of the headlines, ma'am. We are in a nuclear deal today. We're in a nuclear deal right now. They negotiated it in secret since May. They have been issuing waivers tied to their nuclear program of Iran under false pretenses now twice. Once for Iraq, $10 billion, now for South Korea, $6 billion. They have been violating U.S. law by not enforcing our oil sanctions, tacitly allowing oil exports to skyrocket, potentially above 2 million barrels per day to China. All of that is covered by the Iran Nuclear Agreement and Review Act. That means that every single time they have issued a waiver as part of a secret nuclear negotiation, they are violating the law. They violated the law this Monday when they issued the waiver, not waiting to come before Congress. They violated the law in July. They've been violating the law all summer, allowing sanctions relief to go from the oil exports to China. At some point, we need to ask for documents. We need to say, show us what you have been negotiating, show us the communications you've had with banks. The Treasury Department won't tell Congress what banks are being used for these transfers right now. What bank in South Korea? What bank in Switzerland? What bank in Qatar is going to be using this? What are the Iraqi banks? What are the Omani banks involved? Which Irish and German banks were involved that we saw in the waiver on Monday? We don't know account numbers. We talk about oversight. We don't have true oversight over this money. We're turning it over to the Qataris and the Omanis. We're going to approve every transaction? Are you going to get a copy, Mr. Chairman, of every transaction that Iran has asked for to see exactly what they're paying for? Let's put aside the fact that $6 billion is just a budget subsidy. Money is fungible. We're freeing up $6 billion to persecute LGBT in Iran, to persecute the women of Iran, to carry out assassination plots against American citizens today on U.S. soil, to send weapons to Russia to use against Ukraine while we ask for more money to defend Ukraine. All of that being done underwritten by this secret deal. If they believed in the deal, Mr. Ranking Member, the way you articulated it, then let them send it to Congress for your review and a vote. That's the law.
Quick follow-up. When the JCPOA was first brokered, we were told Iran's breakout time, the time they needed to produce enough radioactive material for a nuclear weapon, was about a year. What's Iran's current estimated breakout time?
We're near zero, ma'am. A long weekend, we can have enough fissile material for one nuclear weapon, 9 nuclear weapons in 3 months. But the key to remember here is that if we had stayed firm in the maximum pressure campaign up front, instead of going to maximum deference, we wouldn't have seen Iran race forward to this nuclear threshold that we find them in today. And so, yes, man, we are in a very dire situation. Unfortunately, for $50 billion or more, we're not actually curtailing their nuclear program. We're not rolling it back. We're not getting rid of the enrichment. They're still enriching at 60%. The breakout timeline is still near zero. And we're now moving the goalposts to hoping that the intelligence community can detect weaponization. That's a big bet for our national security.
This is not just another bad decision, bad point of view on President Biden's part. You can add to the 50 years that he's been on the wrong side of every decision when it comes to foreign affairs, as Robert Gates said about him. This is maybe the worst that he's ever done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.